So imagine this, you're just some regular guy making videos of an old card game, and then one day you stumble upon a video game based on that card game. But something is off about the game. The characters feel alive and can think for themselves, but there's no information about the game whatsoever online. But the scariest of all, it is impossible to find a physical copy of it for less than $60. That's the game of Inscryption. A seemingly harmless game that is a lot more than what meets the eye. A game that contains a lot of secrets inside. This game was released on 19th October 2021, directed by Danny Mullins, who has also directed other games such as Pony Island and The Hex. Inscryption is definitely his most well-known work, however. Inscryption is a truly one-of-a-kind experience that managed to be engaging all the way to the end, while also being very mysterious. So with that, let's get into the video. This is Inscryption. First time opening up the game, you can hear a voice.
Okay, time to figure out what's on this thing.
But by looking at the menu in front of you, you can tell that something is off. You can't start a new game, but rather just continue. Someone has definitely played on the save file before. So pressing on continue the game, we are left in a dark room. Now this person in front of you is Leshy. Leshy wants to play a card game, so starts off by introducing the mechanics. The goal of the game is to attack the opponent to get enough gold pieces to finish the round. You do this by using your cards, of course. But to use one of your cards, you have to sacrifice another. Some cards needs more sacrifices than others. Like this bullfrog card only needs 1 blood to be played with, while this wolf needs 2. Usually the more strong a card is, the more blood it requires to be placed. Every time you're done with your turn, you click on the bell and the opponent starts playing again. For now it's easy, but as you go along, it will get a lot harder. There is also the cards that need bones to be placed instead of blood. Now these cards can be placed depending on how many bone coins you have on you. When your card gets knocked out, a certain amount of bones will spawn from them. Some spawns more than others. So with this, you have 2 ways to put a card down on the board. Each card has their own strengths and weaknesses. Some might deal a good amount of damage but have a small health pool, others might have a great amount of health but no damage. But then there are also the cards that have an extra effect. These cards are displayed with a symbol on the bottom of the card. These are called sigils and give a card a unique stat. A common one, for example, is the symbol of the wing. This means a card will attack you directly and avoid the card that's right in front of them. Or another common one being the skull symbol, meaning if the card gets killed, the attack of the said card also dies. One of my favorite sigils was the pack rat card. When this card is played on the board, a new one will respawn on your hand, meaning you have an infinite amount of these. Also, like when you get one of these cards, is always by a rat. So using the cards effectively is the key to winning the game. In front of you is a map that you use to travel to points, but not all of them are fights. Several are actually points of interest that can help you. Some are definitely better than others though, like the campfire that lets any card gain 2 more health or attack. With the risk being that if you do it again, the card could die. But even just doing it once still gives the card a very good buff. Another example of an interest is his trap symbol, where you can give pelts to this guy called the Trapper. Now this guy will let you buy his pelts in exchange for the gold you've collected. These are used so you can trade cards with a trader, which is another spot on the map. These are only a few of the examples of the interest that can help you and new cards. But one of the best buffs you can get in the game, which is kind of broken, is the Infinite Squirrel. In the game you have 2 decks, one containing your normal cards and one with only squirrels. Squirrels don't do any damage and have only 1 health, only being used when sacrificing to get other cards or taking a hit. Now on the map you can find this symbol, and doing so lets your squirrel card get a certain buff. The best one to get, however, is the one where when the squirrel is placed on the board, a new one will respawn immediately on your hand, essentially giving you an infinite amount of them. And this was very broken, but I'm not complaining. Now, at some point in the game, Leshy will ask you to stand up from the table to get something. From here on out, you can walk around the cabin at any time you want. It might not seem like there's a lot of things to do here, but this cabin does actually contain some secrets to help us beat Leshy, which I will talk about more later. This game has an incredible style to it. I love all the animations for the board and Leshy himself, especially the signs of the different masks he uses. He's like a D&D master. He plays all the other characters, and I think it just makes it so much more immersive. The 2D art on the cards also looks really good, mixing in so well with the rest of the game. And I just love how some things just look so grimy as well. And the art style contributes a lot to the atmosphere. Being alone in this cabin with no way out. There is this one track that plays throughout in this place called the Death Card Cabin. This track is so soothing yet eerie, with a guitar playing in the background. Something that would not feel out of place in a D&D session. Now, while all your cards are just objects, there is one card that stands out, the Oath.
I think it's time for you to start to seriously consider salads.
The Oath, unlike the other cards, is sentient and talks to you. The Oath tells you that in order to beat Leshy, you will have to find a few other cards to help you. Much like him, they can also talk to you. The two other cards are the Lone Wolf and the Stink Beetle. The Stink Beetle you can find inside the safe and the Stunted Wolf inside the clock. I think the reason that these two were hidden away was so they couldn't talk to you and give you any ideas how to beat Leshy. When finding the wolf, he tells you to quickly take the film roll. For now, we're not really explained why we need it, but for later in the game, it'll make a lot more sense. So you're definitely going to get defeated by Leshy at some point. No matter how good you are at the game, you will die at some point. When this happens, your candles are blown away and Leshy grabs you by his really creepy hands. He then puts you in a room where he tells you to make a death card, using several cards from your hand before you're lost to create a new card. After that, he'll take a picture of you and act like the next time you play, you come as a new challenger. For most of the times I lost, my death cards end up being really bad, until the final one where I managed to create a card that was so good, it actually carried me to the end of the game, but I'll get to that later. After managing to walk through the map, you will stumble upon the first boss. Hee-haw! It was the prospector! Being a miner that digs for gold, with a track that perfectly describes his character, with some dark strings in the background and sounds you will hear in a mine, like mining in the cave and pushing cars to stone and gold. There are some things that make the bosses stand out compared to normal fights. Firstly, it will always only have one candle lit, so if you lose here, you won't get any second chances. Second, the bosses have 2 rounds, with the second round being the hard one, where they introduce their main gimmick. For a prospector, if you have cards left in the second round, he'll turn them all into gold, making them completely useless to you. The key to beating this boss is to not overplay in the first round, but rather doing it in the second round. But there is also another thing to keep in mind, and that's the Mule card. This card is exclusive to the prospector, and by defeating it, you will gain several cards to your deck. Dagnabbit, my mule! When defeating the prospector, you're able to choose a rare card. This happens for every boss you defeat. These rare cards are really good, so choose wisely. And after that, the map will change. Both colors and the atmosphere will be different. This map is similar to the first one, but harder. The opponents will have tougher cards and strategies, but if you know what to do and how to use the deck properly, then it should not be too bad. Then at the end, you reach the next boss, the Angler. Go fish. The Angler is a fisherman with yet again his theme reflecting on it. This is one of my favorite tracks in the game. The low bass coming from time to time with the sound effects of fish being sliced up. It's amazing how this music can say so much about the boss itself, even if you've never played the game before. The Angler has a more dangerous gimmick than the previous boss. He will be able to take one of your cards with his hook once every few turns. This can be really bad when you play a high level card, only for it to be taken away. The key to this fight is to display a squirrel card or something very low right before he is about to take it away, so he won't lose a card that's worth a lot. But that's not his only S in the sleeve. In the second round, he will be able to put 4 bait buckets out. At first, they seem to be terrible cards with only 1 health and 1 damage, but once they've been defeated, a great white shark will spawn, and this can be really dangerous, having 2 health and dealing 4 damage. And every time they attack, they will hide again underwater, which means you will be unable to attack them. There is ways to kill them though if you have a card with a Death Seagull, and if they attack the card, they will die. But you can also try to deal as much damage as possible to the angler itself and score enough to win before they come back. Now, both of these bosses are challenging, but neither I would say is hard. The gimmicks can be tough, but they're not too hard to deal with. But the next one, that one took me many tries before I beat him. The boss I'm talking about is the Trapper. I'm afraid I must be skinning you today. This being the same Trapper you can deal with pelts before. I didn't really realize it at first, but his theme is actually him humming to himself while he's cutting up animals for the hide. At first it doesn't really seem to be too hard, but he has a gimmick that makes his fight a lot harder. The leaping traps when defeated will kill your card no matter what health it has, and these strange frogs will turn into trap when defeated. I really struggle with this boss because of this, but the second round is actually pretty interesting though. He actually gives you some pelts so you can trade some cards with him in the match. I really struggled with this fight, but that was until I got a special death card that carried me throughout the whole game. And the card that actually did help me was ironically named Tom in the Dark, with an insane amount of damage, health, and for a lower cost. This card was so strong, it made this fight so much easier. So I beat the boss with a breeze and continued onward. It was kind of ridiculous how much easier it was because of this card. Now, usually after beating each boss, you get to choose a special card and move on to a new map. But unlike the previous bosses, there's no more points of interest on the map, and instead one final fight. Being outside and walking towards the cabin, you can spot a big moon in the background. Leslie applauds you, but also warns you that your journey ends here. Instead of 2 rounds, this fight has 3, so you know it's going to be a much longer one. This fight combines all the gimmicks of the previous bosses and randomly selects which one to choose depending on what mask lands on Leslie when it's his turn. And again, the moon in the background is clear as ever, making for an amazing atmosphere. Leslie will even use some of your previous death cards against you, but I was lucky because the ones he used were pretty terrible, so it didn't really matter in the end. But beating him 2 rounds, he decides to make the game more interesting. By taking a picture of the moon in the background, he can actually use it on the board. The moon has an insane amount of health and it can attack on all rows, but only 1 damage. The moon, despite how intimidating it might seem, it's really not hard at all, but that's not really the point. With how far you have come, Leslie kind of wants you to win. Despite all the challenges along the way and the obstacles, he really wants you to succeed. He loves to play the game and has been wanting to play with someone that can win against him. He wants to make the game more interesting rather than just being hard. And finally, beating the moon and Leslie, the room gets covered in darkness.
Oh my, I think I just beat him! Oh.
Instead of being brought back to the game, we get a selection of clips. These clips are by a man named Luke. He's a YouTuber who opens card packs on camera and gives commentary. These clips aren't that special until we come to the 4th one, where he opens a card pack from Inscryption. But the weird thing is, one of the cards has been drawn to show a location.
Like they were drawn on with a pen. 49 degrees north, 123 degrees west.
It would seem like just some gibberish at first, but traveling there, he does actually find a physical copy of the game Inscryption. This of course is very weird and raises a lot of questions. And with no other leads, he puts the disc in the game, and currently we are playing as him playing the game. These clips were filmed before we started the game. The voice clip in the beginning of the game is actually his voice when he started up the game. So getting out of the clips and going back to the game, Leshy decides to take us to the other room. The same room you usually get taken pictures of by Leshy. But this time you can actually grab the camera. Now here's where things can be different. If you don't have the extra battery for it, Leshy will just take the camera away from you and take a picture of you. But if you do have the extra battery, you can take the camera and take a photo of Leshy, finally stopping his madness. On the blinking box you can collect a symbol. This is the exact same symbol as the start of a new game icon on the menu screen. So loading out of the game, you can actually start a new one. A small cutscene appears telling us about the 4 different scribes: Grimora, P03, Magnificus, and lastly Leshy, all having different ways to create cards to their decks. But now you arrive with one goal, and that is to replace one of the scribes. And when you get into the game's art style has changed drastically. When I first time saw it, it definitely took a bit getting used to, considering that I loved how the game looked before, but I also do like how this part of the game looks. So you remember the talking cards earlier, you know, the Stoat, the Bill, Wolf, you know, those guys? Well, they were actually the 3 other scribes that have been turned into cards by Leshy. And now they're back to their original bodies. When beating the scribes, you can kind of do it in the order you want, with the exception of having to beat Leshy first in order for the bridge to the other 2 scribes to be fixed. Now, each scribe will have some servants to beat before you can beat the boss. What's interesting, however, is that every boss in the area has a unique card dex. Leshy uses the same type of cards like before, using blood to be placed down. Grimora, she uses bones. But P03 and Magnificus uses different types of cards with different types of rules. The cards that P03 use a blue light that goes up 1 more each round until it reaches the max, which is 6. You don't have to sacrifice any cards to place them, you just need to have enough of the required blue light left to place a card. And for Magnificus, there are different type of colored orbs to place a card. You'll have to put either one of the colored orbs on the deck to use said color. But like I mentioned earlier, you have to beat the boss to progress, but they will always have servants to be beaten first. For P03, it's his robot servants. When you first meet him, he won't fight you since your deck sucks, so he asks you to get some better ones. And walking around this factory, we can find some of his servants, who after fighting and beating them, are willing to sacrifice a life to P03 to make his deck stronger. But when they come back to P03, all those sacrifices meant nothing to him, as his deck did not get any better. Magnificus has several servants as well that has been undergoing torture to try and impress him, like the slime guy who has no body. He really wants to be a part of Magnificus' deck. It's also here where we meet the greatest character in the entire game, the Lonely Wizard. He's just absolutely silly and he loves to battle others, and he's a good sport about it despite losing. So after defeating Leshy, I went to P03. But after doing so, a message with a low battery is put on the screen and it goes dark. And yet again, we're brought back to the selection of footage from Luke. After having played more of the game, he still tries to find out more about it, but to no use. Like I said earlier, there's no information about it whatsoever. He then resorts to asking his subscribers if they have any knowledge of it whatsoever. He also does send an email to the company behind the Inscryption card game, but the reply is also really weird, as they state they never made a video game based on the card game. But in the email as well, they respond saying that if Luke don't send them the physical copy, they will actually sue him.
What the fuck?
The most interesting clip happens in the 5th one. In this clip, Luke gets a visit from a lady in a uniform with sunglasses. She asks Luke about the game, and instead of being honest, he lies, saying he has no clue about it. She has however seen his videos of him talking about the game. She gives him her card and wants him to contact her in case he does find it, quote unquote. The last clip shows Luke trying to make another card opening video, but with everything going on with the Inscryption game, he can't. This game is starting to feel more and more of a burden to Luke, and might even cost his life at some point. These clips gives us a lot of questions. We can tell that the lady who arrived at Luke's home was sent by the company behind the Inscryption game, but what I want to know is why? Why did he want the game so badly? Is there some dark secrets that hides in it? Surely it must be special in some way, considering that there's no information about it whatsoever online. After watching the clips, we are back to the game. And at this point I went a bit Magnificus and Gamora last, because I was really struggling with her for some reason. Actually, it was because of this card. Fuck this card.
Now get the fuck out of here.
But finally beating them all, you'll be able to pick a scribe to replace. I choose Leslie because at this point I thought he was a bad guy. And some of the other scribes told me to do that as well. They said that he should be the one to be replaced. And right before being replaced, PO3 appears. With Leslie being gone, you had to fight PO3 again. Only this time there's a purple moon in the background, just like the Leslie fight before. But this time you won't be able to finish it. Because after I played for a while, the screen starts to shake and glitch heavily, with PO3 saying that's the ticket. The shaking is getting louder and the game is about to break apart. When the shaking finally stops, we are met again with PO3 standing right in front of us. Now he is the one in control. This whole time he wanted to be the one in power. And now he wants to play a game with you, with a map just like Leslie's, but this time it's different. And your character can't leave the table for now. You're completely stuck. The game has shifted its art style back to when we played against Leslie, only now we're in some form of factory. Leslie's map was linear, where you just walk straight forward. PO3's map is much more open, with different directions to go. The map, however, is a direct copy of Act 2's map. When you played against Leslie, you had one chance to win, otherwise you had to start all over again. PO3's map actually works differently. There are actually save points and multiple routes you can walk through. The map is also made to be much more technological. Every card is a robot now, and the locations are filled with electronics. Just like when you fought them earlier, the cards will use a blue light as a way to place your cards. And instead of squirrels, you get empty vessels. They have 2 HP and don't do any damage, but they actually do get stronger for each boss you defeat. For each boss you defeat, you actually get an extra buff for the vessels. The goal is to beat the 4 bosses, and to do that you have to travel to different locations. And these locations you can actually choose where to go. In between locations there are normal fights, goodies and money. It is actually pretty generous compared to Leslie's game maps, but at the same time it kind of feels lazier. Not from a gameplay point of view, but more from the game master itself. It feels more like it was done this way so you will be able to wait less for you to finish the game. Both PO3 and Leslie acts very differently as game masters. Leslie, whenever you lose, will be disappointed in you, but would always hope that next time you could beat him. He was always somewhat cheering on you in the background. But PO3, however, whenever you lose, he will mock you, acting smug if there's a challenge he thinks you won't be able to beat. Almost as a motivation to wanting to beat him faster. Whenever you do die, you lose the money you have and you reset to the last checkpoint you're in. You can always pick up the money again where you last died, so it's not a big deal if you lose a battle. If anything, it's just more of a small annoyance. The money can be used on several spots on the map that can give you cards upgrades or tools to use in battles. At some point in the game, PO3 asks you to get the battery frame, which means you can finally leave the table, just like Leslie's cabin. This place, just like his cabin, also holds a lot of secrets. You can find the Angler as a card who is still sentient. Not only that, but the Lonely Wizard from early as well. They both got some unique abilities, so they're both worth keeping around. Now, like I stated earlier, there are 4 bosses to defeat in the game. The first one you will encounter is the Photographer. This boss will take pictures of the board every turn. For every picture they take, there are more ways they can change the board back the way it looked before. This boss is very reminiscent of Leslie. They both use a camera to take pictures and both share a similar color scheme, and the Angler will say it reminds him of Leslie. But the boss is not hard at all. I will even go as far to say it was fairly easy. The second boss in the game is the Archivist. The Archivist has a gimmick where they will access your files, and by doing so will turn them into cubes to be put on the scale. First round is pretty easy, but the second round he will actually put a spin on it. The last file you choose to put on the scale will actually be turned into a card, but if that said card gets killed, your file that was used to create a card will actually be deleted. This boss is reminiscent of Gamora. They both put gravestones at the beginning of the fights, both having a similar color scheme, and as well as his location is based on Gamora's crypt from Act 2. Again, not a hard boss, and it kind of felt like a breeze, just like the first one. I started to notice that these bosses seem to have some weird gimmicks that didn't really seem to benefit them, but rather to make it easier for you to win. Something fishy is going on. and it's not the angler.
I'm over here stroking my dick. I got lotion on my dick right now.
After beating the second boss, the memory card for the game gets full and represented with even more clips from Luke. The first clip shows him having gotten some more Inscryption card packs from a garage sale for a very cheap price. But the next one is him calling the woman he bought it from, asking where she got them from. It was her daughter's cards, but unfortunately she died several years ago. She was, however, a video game developer working late at the same company that made Inscryption cards. He does try and find out more about her death, and after reasoning for a bit, he finds out she died in a fire.
No one was killed at the facility, though tragically young video game developer Casey Hobbs died from fire-related complications. Fuck. She was working late at the facility performing quality assurance on behalf of her employer, Game Funa.
The last clip, however, is the most intense yet, where at night Luke hears someone breaking into his house, with the clip ending just as he opens the door. There is also an error clip right after that, despite being damaged, shows a second of a note being left behind in Luke's house. I can read blood litter box, but I have no clue what that could mean. Luke is still alive as he still continue playing the game, but again, it's only a matter of time before it actually gets worse to him. Returning to the game, I went ahead to the third boss of the game, the unfinished boss. This boss lets you create its design, personality and gimmicks. An example gimmick you can give it is that every time a card dies, a random card takes 5 damage. I think this boss is the best showcase of how PO3 is just a lazy bum. He couldn't even care less about what boss you create, just that you can beat it and move on. If you fight with the boss long enough, PO3 will even be annoyed and disable one of the boss gimmicks. It can be a tough fight, but it can also be an easy one depending what gimmick you take. This boss represents Magnificus. They both have paintings used to show the boss rules. The fight takes place atop the Wizard Tower, and if you also find the slime guy from earlier called Goobert, he will tell you how the boss reminds him of Magnificus. And then, the last boss to fight is also the only one with a unique personality. This is Golly. The 3 previous bosses was based on the other scribes, but Golly is an exception. Now she has an interesting gimmick. She'll access the internet on your computer and use several of your Steam friends as cards, and they are usually very strong. Now I haven't really commented much on the music for these bosses, since I just think they kind of just blend together, but Golly's is different, being more upbeat to show her more innocence. She's a very sweet character, not malicious or rude in any way. I think of all the bosses, she was the only one I found challenging. It's rather funny how despite this being my favorite boss of the 4, for PO3 it's actually his least favorite. Even when the fight is done, all he has to say is, that's enough of that. But it's time to move to the last part. After defeating all the 4 bosses, PO3 will be notified that one of the cameras in the other room is busted, so being lazy as he is, he tells you to fix it. Walking over to the other room and clicking on I'm not a robot button, you get teleported away for a bit.
Hello there.
And in front of you are the 3 other scribes. There's Leshy, Gamora and Magnificus, who have put the differences aside so they can stop PO3. When the moment is right, they will strike him and stop his madness. When returning to the table, PO3 scolds you for not fixing the camera, but you're so close to finishing the game that it doesn't matter at all. The great transcendence is near. He's mentioned this word multiple times, yet I never really thought much of it. But as we arrive to the gravestones again, PO3 is about to tell us exactly what this is. When all the bosses are defeated, you can walk towards the gravestones. Walking towards them, PO3 will even comment on how it's almost been fun playing with you. Unironically, this is the nicest thing he has said to us, and even then, it comes off as very dickish. Reaching the location, he tells you that the Great Transcendence has been prepared, despite us not really having any clue what it could mean. This whole time you've been played right into his hands. By you fighting these bosses, you have made him gain access to your files. I really just said asses. God damn, this is awful. By you fighting these bosses, you have made him gain access to your files to launch millions of copies of this game online where he is the one in charge. It's so obvious looking back now why the bosses had these gimmicks and why it was so easy, but it's too late now. He has won. Or I would say, if it was the fact that he didn't. Both Leshy and Magnificus want you to reset the game, but Gamora has other plans. They find the files of the game and decide to delete everything, meaning everyone in the game will be completely gone and nothing of this game will be left. Waking up again, we have been sent to a crypt. It's very silent with seemingly nothing to do. That is until we come across a tombstone and some names you have to put in it. One of these includes Luke. Putting the names on a gravestone, a passage is opened and we are greeted again by Gamora. They want to play with you despite how everything is going to be erased soon. Not really much to comment on the gameplay here. Use cards with bone symbols on them, but you won't play them for long. Gamora even had prepared for this awesome looking pirate boss, but it gets deleted before you get the chance to fight it. She wants to delete the game because the game contains some dark secrets that should never be seen by anyone. And with her final moments, she shakes her hand and then gets deleted. The screen gets dark again. And wake up right after again, we are back at Leshy's cabin. Only now several parts of the cabin is missing. And Leshy too wants to play with you again. And man, I was just really happy to play with him again. When I pulled the Tom in the Dark card from the card deck, the same card I used to beat him earlier, he commented on it, saying how it was a strong card and I did a really good job. All he wanted to do was play with someone that was good and could beat him, and that someone was us. Even when the tipping scale is gone, he says not to let us keep up the score and just continue playing. He just wants to spend his last moments playing with you. But sadly, this only lasts for a little bit until it becomes impossible to play the game anymore, due to the assets being deleted. And with that, Leshy thanks us and shakes our hand, and he is gone too. And finally, we are brought to a place that just filled with a white void. Nothing else to see except for Magnificus in the distance with some pillars. When you get close to him, he asks you, why don't you just eject the disc, Luke? Just spare me and whatever is left. But he has seen into the future that Luke doesn't eject the disc. He also wants to fight Luke, as he also states that both of them will meet their maker soon. Two pillars rise from the ground where both of you are standing, and you get equipped with this Yugo dual disc equipment. The music is the most dramatic yet, like the world's about to end. There are no scales like in previous battle. Instead, both of you have a number displayed behind Magnificus. The first one to reach 0 loses. And instead of playing with 2D cards, they're displayed in full 3D models. This is the most unique fight in the game. Magnificus, unlike Leshy and Gamora, who accepted a death, Magnificus shames you for letting this happen, scolds you for letting this world just be erased like that. He also drops one of my favorite lines in the game: nothing beautiful can last. The longer you fight him, the more unstable the world gets. More and more assets get deleted, music gets more and more distorted. And then everything in the battle gets deleted, and Magnificus is on the ground crawling, wanting to shake your hand, but unfortunately you won't be able to. You then play as a 2D sprite again, and walking forward for a bit, you'll find a person sitting. This person tells you that all that's left now is the old data, and this should not be looked into. A loud buzzing gets louder and louder the closer we get to it, until we see a grey block, and clicking on it, we get sucked into it and unzips the file. After smashing the game, Luke calls a police officer to report in the game that it had doxed him. But in the middle of the call, someone knocks on the door. And when opening to see who it is...
I told you!
Oh hey, it's a lonely wizard. And that's the ending of Inscryption. Now, you might think with a game like this there are multiple endings and routes to do, but no, this is the only ending in the game. From the very start, Luke had sealed his fate when he found the game. Whatever was on that file was something that the people who made the game did not want to be leaked. But both that and why this game exists will always be a mystery. This game has many unanswered questions, but I think that's what makes this game interesting. The fact that we don't know what the dark secrets were in the game for it to be destroyed, why does it exist, and so on. Questions we will never know for sure. This game was great to play as it was atmospheric, the beautiful art style to its interesting characters. This is a great game that really knows how to pull the punches and be stuck in your mind. And with that being said, I thank you all for watching, and I will see you again next time.